Well, hello everybody, it's Brother Todd with your Victory Minute. I hope you guys are having a good day. Finally, rain quit a little bit. I was able to get outside. I tried to make this recording inside that pickup truck for about an hour or so, and I kept messing it up. And so I thought I'd take this opportunity, maybe get this out of my mouth the way it's going around in my head. When I woke up this morning, the thunder and the lightning woke me up. And as soon as it did, I knew that my plans for the day had changed. I had a day. I thought I was going to be able to get away today and be able to get some work done, just some manual work with these hands, and that all changed. And so, which I hate, and because I don't get many days like that. But when I'm off, or if I can get off at all, I try to work. I like to do things. I don't like to just sit around. And so, I had this big plan, and customer coming down from the other side of Dallas was supposed to be here, and we was going to make him up a big old load of timbers. And well, that all changed. And as soon as I heard that thunder, I thought about old preacher. He's been in heaven now a good while. He wasn't that old when he passed. His name was Brother Jackie Newton. He was a pastor of First Baptist Church in Kaufman for about 15 years, and he befriended me when I first went to Kaufman as a young preacher. He kind of helped me out quite a bit. In fact, probably about a fourth of my library was his library. When I come up, I don't have a formal, religious education or anything, and so he knew I was always trying to study and read and that kind of thing. So he always would give me some books, and anyway, Sister Newton gave me a bunch of his library after he passed. I say all that to say Brother Jackie was from West Texas, and came here to Kaufman and pastored for 15 years, and everybody in town loved him. And but Brother Jackie told me one time, he said, Todd, I'm from West Texas, and he said, I love Kaufman. He said, but I have got done in 15 years in Kaufman what would have took me 5 years in West Texas. And I asked him where I was at, and he had a couple of reasons. One of them is, I ain't going to go into, but he said, it seems like everybody around here is an expert on everything. He said, you get talk about, he said, if we want to build something at the church, the lawyers got an opinion on how we ought to do it. He said, out in West Texas, he said, if we was going to build something, the carpenters figured it out. And he said, if we had a law issue, the carpenters wanted the lawyers to figure it out. He said, everybody didn't have an opinion on it. And he said then the second thing was that he thought because of our proximity to Dallas, he said everybody's so regimented in their routine that they get stuck in a certain way of doing certain things. And he said out in West Texas, you got to stay flexible. He said you just don't know what a day's going to bring up. So if you want to do one thing and the weather changes or whatever happens, you just got to keep kind of flowing with it. And as soon as that thunder hit this morning, I thought of that. I thought, well, you got to keep flowing. What are you going to do? And then it got me to thinking about this Victory Minute, because as soon as I got to thinking about, okay, there's a roadblock here, I got to do this, need to do that, I got to thinking about Acts chapter 16, and the Apostle Paul and them, how they were moving through what we'd call Turkey today, kind of around that area. They were in a region called Phrygia and then Galatia. And you might be familiar with Galatia. That's where the letter to the Galatians was written. That wasn't written to one church. It was written to a bunch of churches in a province. But anyhow, they were trying to move around. Everywhere they wanted to go, God kept stopping them. And I got to thinking about how in life we run up on times like that. Whether it's something as small as a day comes in with rain, and they're talking about rain later and it knocks out your day. But the reality is in life, a lot of times things are going one way and you think they're going the way you want them to go, and all of a sudden it stops and you have to go another way, or a door gets closed, so to speak. And, this COVID-19 response has closed a lot of our doors. It's made us adapt. It's made us be flexible. I'm tired of it, but just because I'm tired of it doesn't mean it's going away. And so you have to keep operating, okay? You have to find a way to make things work. That can happen in relationships. It can happen in raising kids. Thinking about kids, you think about it. Watch a child. If a child doesn't get what he wants, a lot of times they'll lock up. And I know that's that would be a psychological technical term, that kid locked up. But anyhow, they'll and when they do, they lose their time. If they only got so many hours in a day to play, if you got an hour to play and you spend 30 minutes of it mad because your mama won't let you play with something or do something, you're the one that's wasting time. And if you're a parent, you know, it ain't gonna give them a heart attack to be locked up. You know, you can't give in to a pouting kid. Pouting kids and whiny kids that get the kids pout and whine because it works, okay? And some kids are just better at it than others. And if you give in to it, what you do is you'll produce a pouty, whiny grown-up. And I've been pastoring long enough to say this honestly, okay? And don't take it the wrong way. But old Brother Todd's had it about right here with pouty, whiny, grown men. I ain't never seen so many 30 and 40 whiny kids. And that's what I called you, a kid. And your mama gave you what you wanted when you pouted and whined, and you figured out that's how to live life, and that's how you're getting through, and you're doing it at work, and you're doing it at home. I don't know why in the world most of these girls put up with y'all. I'll just say this, and I'm going to move right on. But that woman of yours wanted to marry a man, not a boy, all right? So you have to tighten it up, Cupcake. But anyhow, I'm going to move right on before y'all get too upset at me. And but if you watch a child go to pouting, then I'm sitting here thinking whether or not I ought to just delete this and start over, because some of y'all be upset about the little cupcake joke. But anyhow, I'm just messing with you, okay? But it is probably time for you to man up. Anyhow, I'm gonna move on. Like I keep saying, you watch a child waste time with something that's not gonna happen, and they'll bang their head against the wall trying to have an emotional fit to get what they want. And a lot of times in life, things just happen that we don't like, and they make us move, or just circumstances can come along and make us move. You got to stay flexible. You got to be able to keep moving towards something positive. You got to keep moving towards God's will getting done. You got to keep moving towards your purpose getting done. What do you do when the door shuts? And that's what I was thinking about with Paul and them there in Acts chapter 16. Paul and them were going through from Phrygia to Galatia, and everywhere they wanted to go, the Lord stopped them. Said they wanted to go to Asia, which is talking about Asia Minor, and that the Lord stopped that. And they wanted to go to Bithynia, and the Lord stopped that. And they just kept going. They ended up in a place called Troas. And Troas is right by the sea, and it looked like there wasn't even nowhere for them to go. But what they didn't know, that God did know, was he wanted the gospel to jump continents, okay? And the gospel went, if you don't know this, the gospel started in Asia. The second place it went was to Africa, and the third place it went was to Europe. And he wanted it to, that's where he took them into Greece. And so I'm just saying all that to say that there was a time where the Bible says the Holy Spirit stopped them. They were wanting to do God's will, but God kept closing doors, and he closed doors until ultimately it was through the closed doors that they found the open door. They would have never found it if they'd have just went on doing what they wanted to do. And then, you know, how good is it that the gospel spread all over the world? So what do you do when the door gets locked? When the way you're thinking life needs to go gets shut down? Well, one, if you think about Paul and them, they kept moving. They kept going the way God was letting them go. They had started out, they were headed to the west, and God kept allowing them to do that. And so what you got to do sometimes is keep doing what you're doing. You might know God's got a big plan for you. You might know God wants you to do something else. But until he opens up that door, you can't run ahead of him. Biggest mistake I ever made in my grown-up life as it affects my family situation was this. I was a fireman when God called me to preach, okay? I also grew up in the engine business, all right? I grew up in the engine machine shop, my grandfather's. And I made more money building engines than I did as a fireman, frankly. And so when God called me to preach, I knew that I would one day pastor. I knew I was headed that way. And so I knew I couldn't be a pastor and be gone once every 3 days. I knew ultimately it wouldn't work, okay? That if God put me in full-time ministry, so to speak, full-time, the hardest working full-time guy that's doing it on the planet right now is a guy that's bivocational, a guy who's working in the church and working a job, okay? That's the hardest working people going in the kingdom in America today, okay? You know a bivocational pastor, you go buy him some dinner, all right? As that brother's working for kingdom and people. But anyhow, so I knew that I knew in my heart I wanted to be a full-time pastor, okay? But God didn't have me to that door yet. Well, so what I did was I resigned the fire department and kept building engines. What I should have done was stayed at the fire department, used the 2 days off, because you work a days off too. I should have used them 2 days off to pastor, not build engines, okay? I could have got somebody to, catch out with me on Sundays. I could have made it work. I just knew it couldn't work for the next 30 years, okay? But it didn't have to. It only had to work for the next 2.5, because 2 years or a little bit better, till I was in full-time ministry, okay? I didn't have insurance. We lost our insurance. We lost a whole lot of our money. I ended up getting laid off while I was pastoring my first little church bivocationally the day before Thanksgiving, building engines, okay? And there we were, kind of hung out. And God took care of us. I mean, we ain't never wanted for anything. But it would have been easier on me if I'd have just stayed at the fire department until God's will, my life caught up with what God's will was, and not me running ahead of him. Does that make sense? God hadn't opened the door yet. I had no business running through it. And now again, God took care of us, but it could have been a whole lot easier, all right? God would have probably blessed Paul and them and helped them, even if they'd went into Asia Minor, Bithynia, because why? Because they were doing it for the gospel's sake. But there's that reality of staying right in the center of God's will. So if God hasn't opened up a door to you yet, all right, just pray about it and keep on his schedule. Now, the second thing is, if you notice that Paul and them, you read it there in Acts chapter 16, they were very open. They were open to letting God lead them the way God wanted to lead them. They recognized something sometimes we forget. And for those of you that may be preachers that are listening to me, okay, or young pastors or something coming up, it's not your ministry. It's not my ministry. It's his ministry, okay? And when you serve the king, you serve at the discretion of the king, all right? If we are ambassadors for Christ, we go where the king tells us to go, not where we think it best. I hear preachers a lot of time, and I've been bad to say it. My church, my ministry, that kind of thing. Well, the reality is, it's his. And so you got to stay open to how he wants to do things. I've got the best staff that any preacher's ever had on the planet. I'm going to tell you something. I put them up against anybody, all right? They make me look like I know what I'm doing, all right? They are some of the best men you've ever seen in your life, but they work with me, and I'm the senior pastor. They'll have a way, of getting things done, and we may be doing something, and I get to really praying about it, studying on them, and they're all right in the middle of working it out, and I go, you know what, boys, I made a mistake here. I don't like the way we're going. We'll sit down and we'll talk about it. We may change the directions. And one of the great things about them is they're open. Okay, we're going this way, and all of a sudden, bam, we had this COVID thing going on. We had all this stuff going on. Church just started a bunch of ministry deals, just started a bunch of services, had this big Easter thing all lined up, planned on. They'd work forever. This COVID thing, 19 hit the brakes, bam. What's God doing? They see the opening, and they break towards it. Why? Because they're open. They're not bound. They're not bound, okay? I know I don't like to work with people that are all locked up. I don't have time to get somebody to talk them into looking at a different door. Guys, I mean, if the door is obviously closed and here's an open door, I mean, it don't take a lot of spiritual depth to just go, well, let's just walk through what God's doing here, okay? Sometimes we make this out to be a whole lot harder than it is because we get so set on what we're going to do. This can really get you in your relationships, your business. Man, you got to stay open. I guarantee you right now, if the man started Coca-Cola, started off to make soft drinks and figured out he could make more money making chewing gum, that's what Coca-Cola would be right now, it'd be chewing gum, right? I mean, you just got to find an opening and take that opening. Be open and be open to God's leading, okay? Remember, he's got to live his life through you. And as such, God thinks he's in charge, and he will act like he's in charge, okay? Sometimes we don't know what he's doing, but if he opens a door, you got to see it, and you do that by being open. And thirdly, they kept expecting God to move. I studied on that this morning. They kept expecting that God would open a door. They run up on Troas with nothing in front of them but the sea, all right? They had gone as far west as they could go. They had gone as far as they could go doing what God had already led them to do, okay? But it's up to God to deal with you when you get to the seaside. It's up to God to set the course when it gets there. I used to worry about, I'm going to do this. How am I going to get this? I got to get to this, and I got to get to that. You know what? I'm going to worry about where I'm at, right where I'm at. And it's God's business to take it to the next place. And if he wants me going to Europe, then we'll go to Europe. If he wants us to go to Bithynia, we'll go to Bithynia. But we're going to keep expecting him to move, okay? Oh, Manly Beasley's in heaven now. Used to ask people this question all the time. He said, what are you believing God for right now? What are you really expecting God to do something about right now? Have that attitude of faith in your heart and in your mind. And what'll happen is you might think everything is a door being shut, but might be just like it was with Paul and them. All of a sudden, by God shutting channels and shutting doors, he got them to where he wanted them to be. He wanted them to have a bigger mind than what they had. They were trying to reach Asia for Jesus, and the gospel had already went out there, and he wanted to take the next step. God may be doing the same thing with you. And so, what am I saying? I know I've been rambling around. Put my glasses on here a minute, and, well, I can't even see. Hey, y'all, I just found these are my prescription glasses, by the way. I've lost these suckers for 6 months. They change colors on me. Ain't that something? I've lost them. They've been gone 6 months. Boy, my wife, I don't even know if she knows I lost them. So y'all don't tell. Oh, no, don't run off on me, camera. I can't believe this. Well, I've been talking too long. So this thing's messing up, so I'm just going to end off from right here because I can't make another one of these things, guys. I'm going to lose my mind. Anyway, love you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.